And one of those frequently asked questions by people who are just getting into chickens is, do you have to have a rooster to get eggs? Well, the answer is no. You'll get eggs regardless. So chickens, being one of those breeds that are domesticated by people, over time we bred chickens to have the ability to lay eggs regardless of the season. Like, they just lay eggs year round. So your wild jungle fowl, they're gonna lay eggs in a season. And then we were like, well, that's super helpful. And so primitive humans took that chicken and bred it to produce eggs year round almost. So you do not have to have a rooster to have eggs. So we've established that you don't need a rooster in order to get eggs, but are there benefits to keeping a rooster in your flock? So one of the reasons I like to keep a rooster in my flock, I've had it both ways. I've had a flock without a rooster when I lived in the city, and now that I live in the country, we have a flock with several roosters. The main reason that I like to keep roosters in my flock is because a good rooster with a good temperament is going to keep the peace among your ladies. So whenever there are any squabbles or fights that break out amongst the hens, the rooster will actually intervene and break up these fights. So it actually keeps your hens in a lot less pecking at each other and fighting and squabbling with each other, because he's the highest ranking in the pecking order, and so they all defer to him and his judgment. So if he doesn't want them squabbling or fighting, they will stop. So he breaks up fights and keeps the peace. Another great thing about a rooster in your flock is when you're out free ranging your hens, he actually is in charge of finding food for the flock. So when there is tasty treats somewhere, he'll call the flock to gather in that spot so that they can eat those treats. All right, and another awesome thing a rooster does for your flock, especially out free ranging, so he's on alert, and letting your chickens out free range is great for them and it's better for their health. But your rooster is going to be watching the skies and the ground for predators. So while the hens are enjoying their day, scratching around, eating stuff, the rooster is ever vigilant and watchful. So when he sees, especially a hawk, so aerial predators, he's going to be really useful for it. So we have only had one hawk attack, and that was before we had roosters here. And we haven't had a hawk attack in 7 years. So he's going to watch the skies for any hawks that are circling or coming above, any mysterious shadows that go across. He's going to give off a low growl sound, and that's alerting the rest of the flock that there's potential danger, and they will rush for cover and they'll go right back into the coop, or if they're further out, they'll run to any other location that they can get underneath. Along with aerial predators, they also watch for ground predators. So anything mysterious, any animal that they don't recognize as a safe animal, they will also alert the flock to run for cover. And so they do a good job to deter ground predators, but they're no match for a coyote or a fox. So a vigilant farmer, knowing when something's wrong with his flock, can run in and intervene before that rooster has to sacrifice his life to save the flock. And one of the best benefits to having a rooster, of course, is going to be fertile eggs. So then that way you can hatch out chicks whenever you need to, whenever you want to add to your flock, if you have people looking for chicks or special breeds. And then, like us, we specialize in colored egg layers like this. And just in case you're worried about fertile eggs, this egg is uniquely designed to only start developing once it reaches the body temperature of a hen for at least 24 hours. So as long as you collect your eggs every day and you don't give your hens a chance to incubate them, you're safe. There's not going to be any developing chick inside this egg. All right, so the obvious negatives is going to be the crowing. So all roosters crow. So they're crowing to establish their territory and dominance over the other roosters. And then the other thing with birds is they have really good vision. So they're actually going to see the dawn coming before our eyes pick up on it, and they will start crowing really early in the morning. So if you're going to keep a rooster, you need to keep in mind soundproof of your coop and putting it in a location or area that is not going to bother you or potentially close by neighbors. There are some things called crow collars that you can get for your rooster. This gentleman right back here, he's wearing one. So they crow to compete with each other, and his crow isn't quite as loud as that guy's crow. So we're trying our no crow collar with him just to bring his octave down a little bit, and that's all it does. It's not going to stop them from crowing completely, and there are a lot of safety guidelines if you're using a crow collar, so just make sure you read all the safety tips and tricks, but it can be something you can look into if you have close proximity neighbors. It will help dampen that crow sound. Another side effect to having roosters is dealing with rooster aggression. Not all roosters are going to be aggressive, but there can be those roosters that are going to attack anything they perceive as a threat to their flock. So you do need to do your research, look up specific breeds and breed temperaments to make sure you pick a rooster that's going to be more gentle or more calm, or one that's going to fit your scenario better. We always raise our roosters from young. I've never, well, I guess I wouldn't say never. We've brought in one adult rooster before, and he wasn't bad. But I've always raised them from young or from a younger age, and that definitely seems to help. We try to instill the whole mutual respect. So they're not afraid of us, and we still kind of handle them when they're growing up, but we still want them to have a reasonable amount of respect for us. And so when we come by, if we're walking through, they kind of just like are near but not in our way. And that's kind of how we teach our roosters to give us space, because we are higher in the pecking order than them. The other thing is with little kids, where they know, like, roosters, they'll chase anything that runs from them. And so once you like run from a rooster, he's going to know that he has the upper hand and he'll chase you every time. So that's a really bad habit, because young kids don't know any better and they will flee from a rooster, giving the rooster the upper hand, and they'll continue to do that. So just do your research and make sure you pick yourself a rooster that's more calm in temperament, and maybe raise a couple of them and pick the best temperament out of those roosters. And always remember that there are way too many good roosters out there for you guys to deal with a nasty one. So I believe that a nasty rooster is going to pass that on to his offspring. So I don't even use nasty roosters in our breeding program, because I want to breed for gentle, calm, and nicer roosters. So just don't tolerate a nasty rooster. There are always better roosters out there. All right, so how many roosters and hens should you have together? So it's always important to take into consideration your hen to rooster ratio. So usually the rule of thumb is going to be 8 to 10 hens per rooster, but that's definitely going to vary depending on the size of your rooster and the breed of your rooster and the temperament of your rooster. So one of the things you guys can do to check to see if your rooster hen ratio is sufficient, you'll notice that the roosters are paying way too much attention to your hens, and it'll start making some of the feathers on their backs fall out. So if you start seeing that, you know you have way too many roosters for the amount of hens. So that's one of the ways you can see, hey, do I have a good balance? The next thing you need to consider when you have a mixed flock with hens and roosters, so hens require having something with calcium in it, whether it's a pellet that you feed that has calcium in it, or if you're feeding free oyster, like for them to just get oyster shell whenever they need it. So if you're feeding calcium that way, or if it's in the feed, roosters do not need calcium, so it can damage their organs. So you need to keep that in mind when you're feeding roosters in your flock. You can either do an all flock type of situation where it's an all flock feed and you have calcium offered to the hens, or you just feed in a mix like we do. So this is layer pellet mixed with scratch grains. That way the roosters aren't getting tons of just the pelleted feed, they're also getting grains, along with letting them free range as often as we can. So then that way their diet is not solely made up of just layer pellet. They're also getting scratch, and they're also free ranging and getting anything they find as well. All right, and I hope that I answered some of your questions. If you're new to having chickens or new to having a rooster, and you know, I always prefer having a rooster in my flock. I think the benefits far outweigh the negatives. But like always, make sure you do your research, decide on a breed and temperament that is going to suit you best, and then maybe raise a couple extras just in case one of them doesn't work out or one of them's too aggressive for you. But like always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for joining us.